My name is Camille Porter, and for 27 years, I have lived as a ghost in my own life. Today was supposed to be the day the ghost finally took shape. I stood in the wings of the university auditorium, the heavy polyester of my master's gown scratching against my neck. Around me, other graduates were laughing, taking selfies, and pointing out their parents in the crowd. I stood alone. I adjusted my cap for the 10th time, my eyes fixed on row 14. Seats 7 and 8. I had bought those tickets with the little money I had left from my part-time tutoring job. I had mailed them with the handwritten note that said, "Please come, this matters to me." But as the ceremony began, the velvet cushions of those seats remained cold and empty. My mother had called me just hours ago. She didn't sound sad. She sounded annoyed that I had even asked. "Camille, we've talked about this," she had said over the phone. "Tyler is receiving his plaque from the Chamber of Commerce. It's a huge deal for the hardware store's reputation. Your graduation is just school. You've been in school forever. We'll celebrate when you come home next month." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just hung up. As I walked across that stage, the applause felt like static noise. I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma, and realized that my family didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a background character in the story of Tyler Porter. But they had no idea that while they were cheering for a wooden plaque, the largest tech conglomerate in the country was preparing a $5 million contract with my name on it. To understand why those seats were empty, you have to understand the girl I was at 8 years old. I remember Mrs. Daly's classroom clearly, the smell of pencil shavings and the hum of the fluorescent lights. She handed out the reading test, and I felt my stomach drop. When I looked at the page, the letters didn't stay still. The letter B would flip and become a D. The S would slide down the line like it was on ice. It was like watching thousands of tiny black ants crawling over wet glass. I would blink, trying to clear my vision, but the words only became more tangled. I was a smart child. I knew the answers, but I couldn't reach them through the cage of the alphabet. I remember sitting on the stairs of our house that night, listening to my parents in the kitchen. My father, Glenn, was a man of few words, and most of them were cold. "It's embarrassing, Diane," I heard him say. "The school says she needs special help. What's wrong with her? Tyler was reading the newspaper at her age." My mother didn't defend me. She just sighed, a sound that carried the weight of her disappointment. "I've signed the forms, Glenn. She'll be moved to the slower track tomorrow. It's better this way. We can't let her struggles distract us from Tyler's potential. He's the one who's going to take over the business." The next morning, I was moved. I was labeled. I became the slow daughter. My parents stopped asking me about my grades. They stopped buying me books. They tucked me away in a corner of the house and focused all their light on my brother. By the time I was 14, I had learned how to be invisible. It was an art form. I knew exactly how to move through the house without being noticed. I was the one who set the table, the one who did the laundry, the one who made sure Tyler's football jersey was clean for his big games. Tyler was 18 then, the golden boy of the town. My mother spent a month planning his college send-off party. The backyard was filled with people I didn't know, all of them praising my parents for raising such a fine young man. A massive banner hung between the trees. "Our pride, Tyler Porter." I spent the entire day refilling ice buckets and clearing away half-eaten plates. No one asked me how my summer was going. No one asked if I liked high school. Late that night, after the last guest had left and the house was quiet, I went out to the garage to take out the trash. Sitting on top of a pile of old newspapers was Tyler's old laptop. He had received a brand new expensive model as a graduation gift. This one had a cracked screen and a battery that barely held a charge. I took it to my room. I hid it under my bed like it was a piece of stolen treasure. When I turned it on, the light from the screen felt like a secret world calling out to me. I found an old HTML tutorial on a forgotten forum. I started to type, "Hello World." For the first time in my life, the letters didn't move. Code was logic. Code was a set of rules that never changed. If I made a mistake, the computer told me exactly where it was. It didn't judge me. It didn't call me slow. In the dark of my room, while the pride of the Porter family slept, I was building a digital empire with my fingertips. Senior year of high school was supposed to be a time of excitement, but for me, it was a time of secret planning. I applied to 10 different universities for computer science. I didn't ask my parents for the application fees. I saved up money from cleaning the neighbors' houses. When the letter from the state university arrived, it was thick. I knew what that meant. I had won a full academic scholarship. I walked into the living room where my mother was folding Tyler's laundry, even though he was already in college. "Mom, I got in," I said, my voice trembling with a hope I couldn't suppress. "Full scholarship, computer science." She didn't jump up. She didn't scream for my father. She just stopped folding a shirt, looked at the letter, and then looked at me with a pained expression. "Camille, honey, are you sure that's wise? Computers are so complicated. You've always struggled with reading. Wouldn't you be happier staying here? Tyler's store is going to need a reliable secretary soon. You're so good at organizing things." My heart turned into a stone in my chest. She wasn't worried about my success. She was worried about losing her unpaid servant. My father was even worse. When move-in day came, he drove me to the dorms in total silence. He didn't help me carry my boxes inside. He dropped them on the curb, checked his watch, and said, "Call your mother on Sundays. Try not to fail out in the first semester. It would be a waste of gas." He drove away without looking back. I stood on the sidewalk with my 2 boxes and my cracked laptop, and I made a promise to myself. I would never come back to this family as the girl they thought I was. University was a shock to my system. I was surrounded by brilliant minds, but I was still the girl who saw ants on the glass. I had to work 3 times as hard as everyone else. I used screen readers to listen to my textbooks while I walked to class. I spent my nights in the basement of the library, typing until my fingers cramped. In my second year, I took a class on data structures with Dr. Ruth Ellison. She was a legend in the field, tough, brilliant, and completely unforgiving. During the first midterm, I struggled. I knew the logic, but the timed written exam was a nightmare for my dyslexia. A week later, she called me into her office. I expected her to tell me to drop the class. I expected her to say I didn't belong. "Camille," she said, looking at my exam paper through her thick glasses, "your written answers are a mess, but the logic you've used in the coding assignments, I've never seen anything like it. You're not thinking linearly. You're seeing the data as a 3-dimensional map." I felt tears prickling my eyes. It was the first time someone had seen my brain as something other than broken. "I have dyslexia," I whispered. Dr. Ellison leaned back in her chair and smiled. "So do I, Camille, and so did many of the greatest architects in history. Your brain doesn't work wrong, it works differently, and in the world of high-level computing, different is the only thing that matters. Stop trying to be like the other students. Use that map in your head." That was the spark that lit the fire. Under Dr. Ellison's mentorship, I stopped trying to hide my disability and started using it as a tool. I began developing a new way to compress data, not by looking at the symbols, but by looking at the patterns between them. It was the birth of the mirror. While Tyler was living the life of a local celebrity, I was a ghost in the university labs. For 4 years of my undergraduate degree and 2 years of my master's, I didn't take a single vacation. While my classmates went to the beach for spring break, I stayed in the windowless basement of the computer science building. I was obsessed with the mirror, my compression algorithm. I tried to stay connected to my family. I really did. I have the digital logs to prove it. I called my mother every Sunday evening, just as my father had ordered. "Hi, Mom. I just finished a breakthrough on my research." "That's nice, Camille.
Listen, Tyler's hardware store is expanding. He bought a second delivery truck. He's so successful. We're so busy helping him with the paperwork. They didn't want to hear about my life. They only wanted an audience for Tyler's. I remember one Christmas, I couldn't afford the bus ticket home because I had spent my last $100 on a specialized server for my data tests. I called to tell them I wouldn't be there. My father took the phone and said, "Typical, you're always making things difficult. Tyler bought us a brand new dining table for the holidays. It's a shame you won't be here to sit at it." He didn't ask if I was hungry. He didn't ask if I was lonely. He just hung up. I spent that Christmas Eve eating a cup of instant noodles in the lab, watching the green lines of code scroll across my monitor. I realized then that I wasn't just a daughter they ignored. I was a daughter they had already replaced with Tyler's balance sheet. By the time I reached my final year of my master's program, the mirror was no longer a project. It was a revolution. My algorithm could compress a 4K video file to 1/10 of its size without losing a single pixel of clarity. In a world of streaming and massive data transfers, this was worth millions, perhaps billions. Dr. Ellison sat me down in her office one rainy Tuesday. "Camille," she said, her voice unusually soft, "you have something here that tech giants like Google and Vantage Systems would kill for, but you have to be careful. Once this goes public, people will come for you. Not just companies, but people from your past. Everyone wants a piece of a winner." I thought about my family. I thought about the way they looked at me with pity. I decided to keep it a secret. I didn't tell them I was graduating at the top of my class. I didn't tell them I was being courted by Silicon Valley. I wanted to see if they would show up for me, not for my success, but for their daughter. That leads us back to row 14, the empty seats. The moment I realized that even if I became the most successful person on the planet, I would never be enough for them because I wasn't Tyler. When I walked off that stage with my degree in hand, I felt a strange sense of peace. The debt of love I thought I'd owed them was finally canceled. I was a free agent. 2 weeks after graduation, I was sitting in a small, cramped office at a tech startup in Columbus. I was making a modest salary, just enough to pay my rent and student loans. Then, at 9:14 a.m. on a Tuesday, an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple: Vantage Systems, Acquisition Inquiry. My breath hitched in my throat. Vantage Systems was the titan of the industry. I opened the email. They had seen the white paper I published under a pseudonym during my master's research. They had tracked me down. They didn't just want to license my algorithm. They wanted to buy it outright. The following week was a blur of black cars, glass elevators, and high-stakes meetings. I flew to San Francisco. I sat in a boardroom that overlooked the entire bay. Men in suits who made more in a month than my father made in a decade were looking at me with genuine respect. "Ms. Porter," the CEO said, leaning forward, "your approach to data compression is unorthodox. It's brilliant. We are prepared to offer you $5 million for the exclusive rights to the mirror, along with a vice president position and a starting salary of $350,000 a year." I remember looking at the contract. The zeros seemed to stretch on forever. For a moment, I thought about the girl who couldn't read the word beautiful in 3rd grade. I picked up the pen and signed my name. I wasn't a ghost anymore. The news hit the industry blogs the next morning. Unknown researcher Camille Porter lands $5 million deal with Vantage Systems. My face was on the front page of every tech site. I was back in my small apartment packing my things for the move to California when my phone started to vibrate. It didn't stop. I opened Facebook. My mother had posted a photo of me from high school, a photo where I looked tired and miserable. The caption read, "So incredibly proud of our daughter Camille. We always knew her unique way of thinking would change the world. She's the pride of the Porter family. Can't wait to have our superstar home this weekend for a celebration." The hypocrisy made my stomach turn. For 20 years, I was slow. I was a defect. I was a waste of electricity. But now that I had $5 million, I was a superstar. Then came the text from my father. Not a call, but a text. "Camille, your mother is making pot roast this Saturday. Be here by 6 p.m. We need to discuss some family business regarding the hardware store and our future. See you then." No, I'm sorry we missed your graduation. No, I love you. Just a command to show up so they could begin the harvest.
I wasn't the same girl who had left for college 6 years ago. I called Marcus, a friend from university, who had become a very sharp corporate attorney. Marcus, I need a favor, I said. I need you to look into the Porter hardware store. Everything. Taxes, loans, liens, everything. Give me 24 hours, Marcus replied. He called me back in 12. Camille, it's bad. Your brother Tyler didn't just expand the business. He gambled it. He took out a massive home equity loan on your parents' house to open a second location that's currently hemorrhaging money. They are 6 months away from total foreclosure. Your father co-signed everything. They aren't inviting you home for pot roast, Camille. They're inviting you home because you are the only thing standing between them and the street. I sat in the dark of my apartment, the glow of my phone illuminating my face. I looked at the $5 million in my bank account. I had the power to save them. I had the power to fix everything. But for the first time in my life, I asked myself, why? Why should I save a house I was never allowed to feel at home in? Why should I save a business that was always prioritized over my education? I told Marcus to pack his briefcase. We were going to Ohio, but we weren't going for a celebration. We were going for a reckoning.
The drive back to my hometown felt like a journey into a past I had tried so hard to bury. I sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's car, watching the familiar cornfields of Ohio blur past the window. Every landmark, the rusted water tower, the old diner, the middle school where I was first told I would never amount to anything, felt like a ghost reaching out to touch me. Are you sure about this, Camille? Marcus asked, his hand steady on the steering wheel. You don't have to face them. We can handle this through legal correspondence. You don't owe them a face-to-face. I do, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I spent my whole life being the girl who didn't speak up. I spent my whole life being the shadow. If I don't look them in the eye now, I'll never truly be free of them. As we pulled into the driveway of the house on Maple Drive, I noticed things I had never seen before. The paint on the porch was peeling. The flower beds, once my mother's pride, were overgrown with weeds. The Porter hardware sign on the side of Tyler's truck was faded. The house was dying, just like the lies that had held it together for so long. My mother was waiting at the door before we even turned off the engine. She ran out with a wide, rehearsed smile, the kind of smile people wear when they're trying to sell you something they know is broken. Camille, my superstar, you're finally home. She reached out to hug me, and for the first time, I didn't lean in. I stood like a statue, feeling the cold air of the evening settle between us. The dining room table was set with the good china, the plates we only used when important guests came over. The smell of pot roast filled the air, a scent that used to mean safety to me, but now felt like bait in a trap. My father, Glenn, sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of forced joviality. Tyler sat across from me, wearing an expensive watch that I knew he couldn't afford. So, Camille, Tyler started, his voice booming with fake confidence. $5 million. That's a lot of zeros, sis. We always knew you were the smart one in the family. I was just telling Dad, Camille is going to be the one to take the Porter name to the big leagues. I didn't pick up my fork. I watched them. Is that what you were telling him, Tyler? Because the last time we spoke, you told me I was wasting electricity on my little computer games. You told me I should focus on being your secretary because that was the limit of my potential. The table went silent. My mother laughed nervously, a high-pitched, fluttering sound. Oh, Camille, you know how brothers are. He was just joking. We've always been so proud of you. Why, just the other day I was showing everyone at the grocery store your article in the paper. You didn't show them my graduation photos, Mom, I said quietly. Oh, wait, you couldn't, because you weren't there. You were too busy watching Tyler receive a wooden plaque. Tell me, Tyler, do you still have that plaque? Is it going to help pay the mortgage this month? My father slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. That's enough, Camille. We invited you here for a nice family dinner, not to settle old scores. We're in a bit of a situation here, and we need to discuss how we're going to move forward as a family. By situation, you mean the foreclosure notice on this house? I asked. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents, sliding them into the center of the table. And by family, you mean you want me to write a check to cover Tyler's gambling with the business's credit line? My mother's face crumbled. The fake smile vanished, replaced by a look of desperate anger. We did everything for you. We gave you a roof over your head. We fed you. And now that you have more money than you know what to do with, you're going to sit there and judge us? Tyler needs that second location to succeed. If it fails, we lose everything. Do you want your parents to be homeless? I was homeless in this house for 18 years, Mom, I replied, my voice gaining strength. I lived in the margins. I was the slow daughter you hid away so you wouldn't be embarrassed at church. You didn't invest in my education. You didn't invest in my dreams. You invested in Tyler. And now that Tyler's investment has failed, you want to use me as a safety net? Tyler stood up, his face red. You're a selfish bitch, Camille. You'd really watch your own flesh and blood go under just because your feelings were hurt a decade ago?
I didn't flinch. I reached into Marcus's folder and pulled out a single legal-sized document. I'm not here to save you, Tyler, and I'm not here to be your bank. I slid the paper across the table to my father. This is a voluntary relinquishment of inheritance and financial obligations. It's a legal document that states I am officially giving up any claim to this house, the business, or any future assets belonging to the Porter estate. In exchange, it legally severs my name from any and all debts you have incurred. It means that when the bank comes for this house, and they will come, they cannot come for me. My father looked at the paper as if it were a poisonous snake. You're disowning us? After everything? No, Dad, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I'm not disowning you. I'm just making our reality official. You disowned me when I was 8 years old. You disowned me every time you chose Tyler's ego over my existence. I'm just finishing what you started. I'm giving you exactly what you've always wanted, a life where you don't have to worry about me. I picked up a pen from the table, one with the Porter Hardware logo on it, and signed my name in clear, bold letters. The ink felt like a heavy weight being lifted from my soul. I pushed the pen toward my father. Glenn, if you love Tyler as much as you say you do, sign it and take what's left of your pride, because you aren't getting a cent of my money.
The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. My father's hand trembled as he reached for the pen. He signed. Then my mother signed, her tears smudging the ink on the page. They didn't look at me. They looked at the floor, at the cold pot roast, at the walls of a house they were about to lose. I stood up and smoothed out my jacket. Marcus, let's go. As we walked toward the front door, I heard Tyler's voice behind me. It wasn't angry anymore. It was small. What am I supposed to do, Camille? I don't know how to fix this. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the brother who had been the center of my universe for 26 years. For once in your life, Tyler, you're going to have to do what I did. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. Maybe start by reading a book. I hear it's a good way to learn things. I walked out into the cool Ohio night. The air felt different. It felt clean. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back in the rearview mirror. I saw the light in the dining room window flicker and then go dark. I wasn't the ghost anymore. They were. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't thinking about row 14 or the ants on the glass. I was thinking about San Francisco. I was thinking about the kids I was going to help with my new foundation. I was thinking about the future. My name is Camille Porter, and I am finally, truly home.
The weeks following the dinner at Maple Drive were a blur of headlines and cold reality. While I was settling into my high-rise apartment in San Francisco, looking out at the fog rolling over the Golden Gate Bridge, my family was watching their world crumble in slow motion. Marcus kept me updated, not out of spite, but because I needed to know the ties were truly severed. The bank didn't wait.
Once they realized there would be no multi-million-dollar investment from wealthy daughter, they moved with clinical efficiency. The hardware store, the business that had been the center of my parents' universe for 30 years, was the first to go. The Porter hardware signs were taken down by men in neon vests who didn't care about the history or the Porter pride. Tyler didn't go down fighting. He went down hiding. He stopped answering his phone. He stopped showing up at the store. He left my father, a man in his 60s who had never known anything but physical labor, to face the liquidators alone. My mother sent me dozens of emails, her tone shifting from rage to begging, then back to rage. She called me a traitor to her own blood. I didn't reply. I simply archived them. I realized that her love had always been a currency, and now that I was the one with the money, she was bankrupt in more ways than one.
In San Francisco, I started my new role at Vantage Systems. For the first time, I wasn't fighting for air. I was breathing it. I sat in meetings where my ideas weren't just heard, they were worshipped. But even as the zeros in my bank account grew, I found myself going back to the basement labs. I began working on a side project, something I called the Ellison Initiative. It wasn't about making money. It was about making sure no 8-year-old girl ever had to sit in a hallway and hear her father call her slow because she couldn't read a standardized test. I hired a team of specialists, linguists, neurologists, and coders who, like me, thought in patterns rather than lines. We started building an interface that translated text into visual logic in real time. I wanted to build a bridge for the brains that worked differently. Every time I felt tired, I would think about row 14. I would think about the empty chairs and the silence of my father. That silence didn't hurt me anymore. It fueled me. It was the quiet before the storm of my success.
6 months after the foreclosure, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my father. He wasn't calling from the house on Maple Drive. He was calling from a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. "Camille," he said. His voice was different. The booming, judgmental tone was gone. He sounded like an old man, a tired, broken old man. I wanted to say I understand now. I saw the news. I saw what you're doing with that foundation. I saw the kids you're helping. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking at the city lights. "What do you understand, Dad?" There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, a ragged, heavy sound. I spent 30 years looking at a son who looked like me, and I thought he was the future. I looked at a daughter who didn't fit my mold, and I thought she was a mistake. I was wrong. I was so wrong that I lost everything trying to protect a lie. Your mother, she still doesn't get it. She's still angry. But I'm just tired, Camille. "I'm sorry you're tired, Dad," I said, and I meant it. But I didn't offer him a check. I didn't offer to buy him a new house. But I spent 26 years being tired. I spent 26 years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never made for me. I've made my own table now, and I think it's better this way. We didn't say I love you before we hung up. We didn't have to. The truth was the only thing left between us, and the truth was that we were strangers who happened to share a history of silence.
Tyler's downfall was less poetic. Without the shield of my father's money and my mother's excuses, he was forced to face the world as an ordinary man. The young entrepreneur was now a 30-year-old with no skills and a mountain of debt. A year after the fallout, Marcus sent me a photo. It was a grainy shot taken at a local big-box home improvement store. There, in the lumber aisle, was Tyler. He was wearing an orange apron, loading heavy bags of mulch into the back of a customer's truck. The pride of the Porters was now an hourly employee, doing the very labor he used to look down upon. I didn't feel joy when I saw that photo. I didn't feel vindication. I felt a profound sense of irony. Tyler wasn't a bad person. He was a product of a system that told him he was special without making him work for it. He was a king of a kingdom that never existed. I deleted the photo. I didn't need to look at his failure to measure my success. My success was measured by the thousands of children who are now using the Ellison software to find their own voices.
The story ends not with a bank balance, but with a girl named Hannah. Hannah was 9 years old, living in a small town in Oregon. She had severe dyslexia, the kind that makes you want to crawl under your desk and stay there forever. Her mother sent me a video. It was Hannah, sitting at a computer using the Ellison interface. She was reading a biology textbook, but she wasn't struggling. She was smiling. She looked at the camera and said, "Thank you, Camille. I'm not dumb. I just see the world in 3D. I cried when I watched that video. I cried for the 8-year-old girl in Mrs. Daly's class. I cried for the teenager in the closet with the cracked laptop. And then I stopped. I am Camille Porter. I am a vice president. I am a philanthropist. I am a pioneer. But most importantly, I am a woman who realized that you don't need a seat in row 14 to know you've arrived. You don't need the approval of people who are committed to misunderstanding you." I looked around my office at the awards, the patents, and the photos of the children I had helped. I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for a home. I was the home. My name is Camille Porter, and I am exactly. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe now. Hidden Sad Story 2.0. Thanks.